Hey friends! We are filming our first YouTube video, which is a little nerve-wracking and very awkward to talk to a camera. But hi, I'm Abigail. This is my husband, Andrew. And this is our first video. So we're going to be doing videos about, or at least on this channel, it's going to be about military, motherhood, having kids and stuff like that, and then also a little bit of makeup. And then this one is going to be starting a channel soon as well. That's kind of in construction, still in the thought process.
Today's video is things that nobody tells you about PCSing to Alaska.
On the ferry.
On the ferry.
Using a ferry.
Ferry.
Ferry. We PCS the beginning of this month, and there were a lot of things that I didn't know that were going to happen on the ferry.
Yeah.
I did so much research. I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to the fact that, like, whenever you know you're about to do something, like go on vacation somewhere or move, you like research the crap out of it. And there were still so many things that surprised me. So I thought it would be great to do a video so I can help out the future people moving.
Yeah, the biggest thing was that even through all the research, we still went in blind. Like, we thought we knew something, and we went in, and it was completely different, and we were finding out a ton of stuff that was just, like, mind-blowing. So that's...
Yeah, when we, like, for instance, we opened up our cabin door on the ferry, and we were like, oh, this is really small.
Yeah, like, one person can only walk at a time, the other person has to, like, suction themselves to the wall.
Which is hard. I know this is our first video, so I don't know how much people are going to know about us. I know there's going to be lots of friends and family watching, but we do have a 1-year-old, and I'm also expecting in May, and so with all 3 of us, but 4 with a belly.
Then I hadn't been working out, so my belly.
So there was quite a few people in that small cabin. So we're just going to go through a couple things that stood out to us. That we think will be useful for you guys.
So the first one that we didn't know is that travel, which wherever you're PCSing from, it could be different, but as for us coming from JBLM, travel didn't help us out with the ferry. They don't help you schedule it, nothing. I spoke to a gentleman actually at my travel office, and he was telling me, oh, you can't take the ferry during this time because it's closed. We were like, well, oh wait, I can't say that. We were like, well, that is unfortunate because, you know, we want to take the ferry.
And I knew, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I knew that was incorrect because there were people on the support groups on Facebook that I was talking to that were taking ferries.
Yeah.
I mean, the next weekend, like a couple days prior to us going, to him going to the travel office. And so I knew that that information wasn't really accurate.
Yeah, so like what cleared up the confusion was certain ports are closed. So depending on where you're trying to, you know, leave from and, you know, arrive to, that would depend on if, you know, travel's like, oh, you can't take the ferry. They didn't say, hey, you can't take the ferry to these ports, but go from here to here and you're good. They don't say that. I don't know if it's just because where we were coming from, they just weren't as helpful, or, you know, a bad day, who knows, but that's where we were at.
Essentially, make sure that you're asking questions and that you're not afraid. I know that also must come with rank, and it can be intimidating to ask questions, or even as a spouse, not being a little bit disconnected from what's going on in the travel offices. Don't be afraid to ask more questions and go back a second time, or ask more people in your unit maybe and see what they've done, because there are a ton of people that have been to Alaska. There's a ton of people that have used the ferry even during the winter, and it never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
Ask for clarification.
I think I went like 4 or 5 times. Just a single question would come up and I would be like, hey, what's the answer to this? And a lot of times, even if they didn't know it, they would still try to give me the answer. So, I mean, the beginning part was a little frustrating, but, you know, in the end, they really did help us out a lot. But, yes, the first one is travel does not help you with your PCSing if you're taking the ferry, which means you have to buy the ticket, you have to, pay the money up front. Now, if this is, technically you would have a GTC, and so you could put it on your GTC. That's fine. You're good. That way, it's not just coming straight out of pocket. Put everything on your GTC. That way, it's not hurting your bank account.
And if you've received orders for Fairbanks and this is going to be your first duty station and maybe you don't have a GTC, which is a government travel card to book the ferry onto, just make sure you're saving up some money if the ferry is the route you want to take. Save up some money. I think we spent, our total was $2,600. And we're also, later in the video, we're going to go over a couple ways that you can save some money, especially if you don't have kids. So the second thing we wanted to talk about is that the cabins on the ferry are very small. So we're a family of us two, a 1-year-old, and I'm also expecting. The cabin was really, really cramped. It's not something that we couldn't deal with for 3 days. I mean, we made it work. Obviously, we had to. But they are very small. In the cabin that we got was, you walked in, immediately there was a bathroom, and then there was a sink, a tiny little shelf, and 2 bunk beds. And for a 1-year-old that needs to run around and get the wiggles out, that was really, really difficult. And I also would say that we overpacked a little bit. So we had a cooler in there, we had a suitcase with all of our stuff.
Yeah.
It just got very cramped very fast. So just expect that. And I would plan to spend a lot of your time outside of your cabin. Just know that going into it so you're not disappointed when you show up, because I know it was a shocker when we showed up. We were like, wow, this is really small. And the second portion of this part is that you don't actually need a cabin. So if you're traveling without children, I absolutely would not do this with children, or at least small children.
Yeah.
If you don't have children, you don't have to get a cabin. And I thought that meant that you would have to sleep on the deck upstairs outside, which in the winter would be absolutely impossible because it was so cold. That wouldn't be doable, but they let you sleep pretty much anywhere on the ship, which is really nice. There's a theater room in there. There's a front facing deck there. And all of those are recliners, little booths that you would be at a restaurant. There are booths, benches, anywhere.
There were people sleeping in the cafeteria,
you can
anywhere.
You can sleep anywhere that you can put a sleeping bag or a pillow.
If we did it all over again, and obviously we didn't have a 1-year-old, if our kids were a little bit older, I would do a tent and make it a big adventure kind of thing.
I might be mistaken, but I think if you have a tent, you have to sleep on the top deck, which is outside, but there are space heaters.
Yeah.
But that would actually be kind of fun, especially if you're not PCSing during the winter. If it was the summer and the temperatures weren't as harsh, that would definitely be an option. I mean, you probably wouldn't even need the tent. You could just sleep outside. It would be beautiful.
Yeah.
But obviously with toddlers, that's not an option. So just know that is an option for you if it's just you and your spouse, or you, your spouse, and maybe some older children, 7, 8 years old. That would be a great option for you guys. It would make it more of an adventure. There are public facilities if you don't get a cabin. So there are public showers, laundry. I mean, there's everything. Everything that you would need is there. So if you decide to try to save some money, I almost think that $1,000 of our total price was the cabin.
It was 13 something. Yeah.
Yeah. So a portion of your cost is your vehicle, your tickets for being on there, but a lot of the price of it is your cabin. So if you wanted to kind of bring that price down and you guys can, slum it for a little bit, it's totally an option for you.
So the next thing we want to talk about is pets. We have 2 dogs, and they're medium-sized dogs, and we knew this going in, but your dogs have to stay in the car. They can't go with you, on the ship. They can't go to your room. They stay in the loading dock for where the vehicles are. And one big question that we had was the kennel situation. And I know you were looking it up for, a couple weeks?
I saw on a Facebook post where initially I thought that the dogs would be able to free roam within our vehicle, which is a lot better. This situation would have been like really difficult for them, to begin with. And so having them being able to move around the vehicle would be more of an ideal situation. But then I saw somewhere on Facebook that they would have to stay in a kennel in the vehicle. I honestly think it was on the Ferry website.
So.
It said that they would have to be in an approved carrier within the vehicle. And that scared me because our dogs are neurotic, they're really nervous, they have, they react really strongly to change. And so traveling via ferry was already going to be difficult, but thinking about them being in a kennel in our car was also really difficult. I gave the ferry company a call, and they told me that wasn't true. That the dogs are able to freely move about the vehicle as long as the vehicle is enclosed. It's not like an open bed truck or anything, which we have a little crossover, so they were able to, we were able to lay the seats down and let them move about, have, blankets and stuff. But they did have to stay in the vehicle.
And that goes along with, how you said earlier, we overpacked. Like, make sure that if you have, more than one dog or even one dog, that you're taking into consideration,
how much
that
room
part.
they're going to need.
Because one, being stuck in a car, no matter how big your car is, that's already unfortunate for the dog because they can't move around as much as they normally would. So just having that little bit of extra space for them is always, nice for your pet. The next thing that also goes along with the pets is your dogs don't get to go out to like grass or outside to go to the bathroom. They go on the concrete. So one, our dogs are used to going outside, they're used to going on the grass, they don't go on the concrete. We've never used like puppy pads. And so we thought, hey, let's try the puppy pads, it'll be a great idea. But they didn't know how to use that. So
you're basically encouraging your dog to have an accident, and they're looking at you like, I don't want to go on the floor, like I'm going to get in trouble. And so that portion was really difficult. Our dogs ended up holding it for a good, probably 24 hours until my female dog, she ended up going and, finally got the hang of peeing on the concrete. And it's literally peeing on concrete. I mean, they pee and it's like running down. They do have stations for you to clean up after your pets, which is a huge thing for them. There's like bleach spray and paper towels, so you do have to clean up after your dogs.
Yes.
But there is a good chance that they will hold it. So don't be alarmed, because one of our dogs did end up holding it for almost 36 hours.
Yeah. With that though, I'm gonna say I brought my own paper towels and my own spray. I didn't know they were gonna provide that for us, so that was handy for us, especially in the probably last day or the last, I'd say probably 12 to 15 hours was they ran out of paper towels. So if you can just help out by just bringing your own, paper towels at minimum, that'll help you out in the long run. The other thing is when you go to let your dog out, you only get 15 minutes each time. And it's...
So on our ship, it was 8:15 in the morning, 2:15 in the afternoon, 8:15 in the evening, and 12:15 midnight.
Yes.
There were 4 calls a day. They were 15 minutes long and strictly 15 minutes long.
Once 15 minutes hits, there's people who are staff that work on, down there for that reason, and they're just walking around making sure that everybody's cleaning up. But they start to tell you, all right, come on, and they escort you to your car so you can put your pets back up. But when you start to port, it happens more frequently. You're able to let your dogs out more frequently.
And when you do port, they will give you a schedule on which places that you will port at and at what times. And it just so happened that our port, where we needed to actually get off and continue traveling, was one of the last ones. So we had a couple of opportunities to leave the boat before we actually had to continue traveling. So we would get off, let our dogs go pee, on the grass of where we were ported at. We'd go put them away, go get breakfast, come back, that kind of thing. So you have a lot of freedom once you start porting. But before that, it is strictly those 4 deck calls is what they're called.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to say before we move on is deck calls are to let your pets out and to take care of your pets, but also they're an opportunity if you don't have pets to run to your car and grab something if you need to grab something, another charger or whatever it may be. That's your opportunity to run to your car. Otherwise, that car deck is closed.
Yes.
Another piece of advice I have before we move on, I'm gonna just keep thinking of things, is I would follow the advice of having paper towels and urine spray in your car, not only to clean up after your pet, but just in case they have an accident in your car. You want to be able to quickly address that because you still only have 15 minutes to do what you need to do. So if there is an accident in your vehicle, you obviously don't want it sitting for hours. So just have that handy for yourself. Just make life easier and have those things.
Yep. The next thing is taking the ferry. Whether it's the ferry or driving or flying, you cross over internationally. So you have to have health certificates for your pets. And the health certificates are only good 10 days after you get it. So we made sure that we got ours the day before we left in case, something happened and we got held up in, Alaska or Canada or
which we did
something.
it did end up happening where we got stuck in Alaska for a night. The trick of that is finding a clinic that will do it on a walk-in basis. We found a clinic in Washington, which I can list the address of that clinic below in the description. But that clinic did health certificates and shots on a walk-in basis. So I literally waited until the day before we left on our ferry to do it. And it was super easy, super quick, and it was really affordable.
It really was.
The next thing we're going to talk about, literally nobody told us, and I would scream from the mountaintops if I could, is that seasickness is real on the ferry. So there are certain sections of the ferry travel route where you go through open water, and that means that you don't have land on either side of you as you're traveling. There are portions of it. Primarily you stay close to the coast because you are porting so often. But the second day we were on the ferry, they announced that they were going to be going through open water and that it was going to take about 2 hours to get through. I had no idea what that meant until they said this would be a good time for you to take Dramamine if you need it. And I was like, oh crap. Well, both of us have been on boats before. He's been deep sea fishing. I've been on, boats deep in the water and stuff, and so I never thought, I kept telling him, I don't get seasick. I don't get seasick.
It was something that we both, we've done the little cruise ships to where they the dinner cruises, but there's a difference between that kind of boating
and this. Yeah, let me just tell you the story here. So we went to the kids area to let Matt play. Mind you that as a 1-year-old, the seasickness didn't affect him at all. He didn't notice it, nothing. But Andrew and I were so nauseous that my face was probably green. I went to go sit in one of the front facing decks, and literally, if you're seeing, if you're looking out the window and you're seeing the water line and the coast was doing this. It was, you were literally going like that, and you couldn't walk. It was horrendous, and I eventually got so sick, or I felt so sick, that Andrew left Matt with me and said, hey, I'm going to go downstairs. They do have an area where you can go buy anti-nausea, motion sickness medication. He went downstairs. Literally, as soon as he left, I have Matt on my hip. I am running down the hallway, stopping at a trash can in the hallway, puking my guts out because I just couldn't handle it.
Well, and the reason I left Matt with our son with her is because they had recommended not to walk in the hallways during that time.
He was also walking downstairs, so safety-wise, it was better for him to leave Matt with me. Little did he know that I would be barfing soon after he left. So I had Matt on my hip. I'm throwing up in this trash can. This guy is like, "Do you need help?" Trying to help me. He sees that I'm pregnant, and it was just. It was a thing. So.
But kudos to that guy, because He's like the real
know.
MVP here.
He checked on me
yeah.
a couple times after that. He was like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, so I would say just a warning, be prepared for that. I will say that, like, I don't mean to get like gross or anything, but throwing up because of seasickness really isn't bad. It doesn't feel like a stomach bug. It doesn't feel like you're ill. It just feels like you need to throw up and it makes you feel better. So if that does end up happening to you, don't worry. But if you do have Dramamine or something that can help you relax during those open water bouts, I would suggest taking that because that was horrendous.
Yeah.
The next thing we want to talk about is how the boat is structured, and mostly that there are a lot of places to go outside on the boat. I was worried about being like cooped up inside, and that ended up not being the case. All around like the 6th floor, which this I'm just talking about in reference to the boat we were on, which was the Columbia. But all around the 6th floor and 7th floor, there were railings where you could go outside, get some air if you needed it. Some people get a little claustrophobic when it comes to being in the same place for too long. So getting some fresh air really, really helped. And then that's not to mention the solarium that's on the top deck, which is where we've talked about like people like camping out and stuff if the weather permitted.
Yeah.
You can go up there. There are like lawn chairs and lounge chairs. People were working out up there. I mean, it was a little
That was
cringe.
weird, yeah.
It was cringy. But do whatever you got to do. But there are places to get fresh air, so don't feel like that you're just going to be stuck inside your cabin.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is your electronic situation in there. You have 2 outlets in your cabin, and they're right above your sink. We have a 1-year-old, and trying to keep him, occupied and distracted instead of just, being a 1-year-old on a really small ferry. I ahead of time when we had our movers come and pack us up and get our stuff, I kept a small TV, like 22-inch TV, my Xbox, and before we left, we went and got him a portable DVD player. I would recommend bringing a power strip. Makes your life a whole lot easier because while the movie's playing, especially with our son, he loves musicals, and so it was the movie Sing on repeat for
3 days.
3 days, yeah. So we wanted to, charge our phones so we could play on our phones. We all sat on the floor with our back against the bunk bed that's in there.
Watching Sing.
You have to make
It work.
You have to make it work, yes.
And when we say that your cabin is small and there's nothing to do in there, it's literally so small and there is nothing to do in there besides breathe on each other. Having a little bit of a distraction and something to kind of just waste time doing is huge. We were able to charge both of our phones. Matt had an iPad with him just in case he wanted to play it. We also had his portable DVD player that had a wall charger, and then we had the TV,
the Switch.
Yeah, we had a ton of things. Saying it's the most ethical thing to do because you're using a lot of power, but at the same time, for everybody's sanity, it made a huge difference being able to let Matt watch a movie, after his nap or before his nap or something like that. So the last thing we wanted to talk about is something that we did, but I wish we would have done better, and that is the fact that you can bring a cooler on the boat. We went to Walmart, purchased a really cheap cooler, filled it with things for our son. We had heard before getting on the ferry that the food there was very expensive. And granted, we were traveling on a GTC, so it wasn't necessarily coming out of our bank account, but it was something that we wanted to keep in mind. We don't always want to eat out, and we want to have those things that we really like, especially our son, because he's starting to get to that picky point, and I just don't want him eating junk all the time. So what we did is we bought a cooler from Walmart, filled it with cheese and meat and bread, mayo, applesauce, pouches.
We got some fruit.
Yeah, some fruit. We just kind of filled it with the things that we know he likes and that we like to snack on. One of the concerns that I had was we were going to fill it with ice, and that as soon as we got on the ferry, it was all going to melt. But they do have an ice machine on the ferry, or at least on our ship, which again was the Columbia. So it was like 25 cents, and you could fill up like probably 2 buckets of ice. So we ended up doing that really poorly, and our food ended up going bad because we just kept forgetting to get ice, and you know, we ended up eating that going out food, like eating on the restaurant there and stuff. And so it didn't really work out. It could have been better, but if you are trying to save some of that travel money and that per diem, or if you just don't feel like eating out, or if you have allergies or something like that, it's a good option to get a cooler, and just know that there is an ice machine. Yeah,
if you're gonna bring a cooler, going back, I probably would have got a better one. Probably would have packed less into our car, so we could have made room for that. But these are all the things that you should think about, you know, especially if you're planning on taking the ferry.
So those are the things that we wish somebody would have told us or shared with us about traveling on a ferry to go to Alaska. I know a lot of people, myself included, really look to YouTube for a source of information when it comes to military moves, but there isn't a whole lot out there. So that's kind of our goal in this, is to bring out a lot of information that spouses and service members are looking for. And if anything in this helped you, then we're happy to do it. Before you click off, be sure to subscribe if you want to see any more videos from us. If you have any suggestions about videos or content that you'd be interested in seeing, please leave a comment below. And also in the comments, we'd love to hear any advice that you have for other service members or their spouses with PCSs in general, or if you've actually done a PCS from anywhere to Alaska. We would love to hear what you thought was important or what helped change the game for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.